Work. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of Hammering Down. I'm your host, Kaylor Hodges, and I'm hoping you're having a great day. Yes, there are 2 episodes in 1 week. No, I'm not dying. No, I'm not telling you that I'm retiring. I can, in fact, make multiple episodes in 1 week. Don't get used to it. Just don't do it. For a little breaking the fourth wall, because you care about that. This is being recorded on the Tuesday before Detroit City. So I have no idea what happened in the Detroit City match. For me tomorrow, for you yesterday, which also means I have no clue what happened in the women's match yesterday for you, tomorrow for me. So I'm going to blindly assume we won both of them 5-0, and we're just going to celebrate like we did. And if it didn't happen, I will cut this out. I definitely won't. I don't edit things. You know this. So all that to say, I am back with a very special friend that comes on once a year, twice a year, sometimes more if we have some kind of vanity conversation we want to have. The writer of the Vamos Morados blog, you know him, you love him, and he is going to be on the radio call for Louisville City, for Louisville versus Legion this Saturday, slowly but surely becoming the voice of Louisville soccer, Benton Newman. Benton, how you doing, man?
Doing great. And voice of Louisville soccer might be a stretch. I think I'm like third string on the depth chart for the color commentary, but I'm on the roster, so I'm pretty pumped about that. And if you're a Legion fan, probably don't want to tune into my broadcast because I'm going to be a homer and you're not going to like it.
I mean, it's on the Louisville ESPN, so I'll be honest. If I ever turn on the radio and it's my home city's radio channel and they are not being a homer, I'm turning it off.
I'm pretty unapologetic about it. It's fun. It's a good time, but I'm excited. And I knew when I realized I got one of the Legion matches, I had to text you right away. I was pretty pumped about that. I always think of you anytime Alabama or Birmingham comes up, especially obviously when the Legion comes up.
Man, it's always cool to see, what you're doing up there. Everybody knows that I would absolutely bite someone's hand off just to do something. To be fair, I've done a couple of the FC Birmingham matches, which has been super fun to call those games. But hey, someone at Legion, if you're listening, I will do the W League and the League 2 matches myself. I will use my own data to do StreamYard. I will do it. Please. Just let me cook a little bit, people.
I really wish they would open up and take care of you. I'm fortunate that I've gotten the opportunities I have, and because the front office, they could have easily just not, opened up some of these opportunities that have come my way. Yeah. Well, it makes me mad every time I think about it for you. I'm like, dude, he does so much. They should be rolling out the carpet for you, like taking care of you.
Well, I do appreciate that. Kind of speaking of doing too much, we talked pre-show about things. If I start to sound like my voice is dying, I've already recorded an episode today. And I have one after this. So if I'm just letting Benton just talk and I am just like downing water, that just I'm okay. I promise I'm okay.
Your man here is a machine. He can't stop, won't stop. Good
can't
for you.
Stop. Louisville City, man. They're good.
That's one way to put it.
That's one way to put it. While I watch every match that comes through, because doing the USL show, it's just kind of the nature of the business. It really, all I can do is I can watch the match, and I can't do what I do with Legion, where I watch the Legion match 3 times, or I don't really have the need to dive into all the numbers and get into the nitty gritty. I see what I see and I move on with my day. Mm-hmm. You have, you're in there, and despite no longer being on Twitter, you do still write, obviously, And the big thing that I follow, obviously, was your Tampa Bay recap because it's your most recent win, but also the
Yeah, a little
how's it
behind it.
going? Well, and then the how's it going,
I
right?
like that.
Because those are the ones like what's happened most recently, and just in general, what's made this team go. And according to, excuse me, points per game, this is the best Louisville City team we've ever seen in the most competitive USL we have ever seen. I mean, you have Miami, who theoretically should be a free 3 points, but even then, they show up and give everybody a hard game. They show up for the first 45 minutes and die, but that's 45 minutes more than other teams were giving us
Mhm.
years past. Even Las Vegas is pretty good this year. I'm fully on the Las Vegas bandwagon. There's not a whole lot of teams that you look at and just say, we should be taking 3 points. There's really just one. And so for this to be the most complete Louisville City team, what I said in the pre-match preview before we played Louisville City was while they kept around some of the same faces, like you have some 10-year members that are still a part of this team, they made the hard decision this year to cut bait on some fan favorites. They decided to move on from people that people absolutely adored, and they brought in some sort of under the radar talents that if you follow the USL real close, you really do love. I mean, Arturo Ordonez, everybody kind of knew who he was.
Mm.
But Taylor Davila, if you watched him at RGV, he was the best player on the pitch every single game. He was incredible, but he was also at RGV. Doesn't count, right? You brought in other players. Sam Gleedle is one of my favorite utility players. You can play him at fullback, you can play him in midfield, you can play him at striker, and he excels. And all that's made this Lou City team so special. Is there something else that has just made this team go?
I think that Coach Danny Cruz deserves a lot of credit for his recruiting. You point out there was a lot of tough decisions made. You got guys like Cameron Lancaster, Oscar Jimenez, and a few others kind of moving on, which is always a tough call to make. But Coach Cruz has had a very clear vision of the team he's wanted to build, and now that he's got a few years under his belt in terms of being a coach, I think he's learned a lot in that time, and this is kind of the culmination of all that. We've long known he's been a fan of a back three formation, and he finally, I think, has like kind of a full team to really implement that on the regular, as we've seen. I kind of thought there'd be a little bit more formational diversity, like still kind of using the 4-3-3, which we've historically used, but he hasn't need to use that really. Still really just kind of stuck gun ho with the back three formation. But I could go ad nauseum a lot of the recruiting names, but I think Jansen Wilson's a really good one to highlight and point out. Under the radar player. Like if you look at his background, I mean, he played at some D1 schools, did some stuff, and essentially like in the non-professional context, was a trialist with the team for like 2 years and finally earned his way on the team. Like that's a hard thing to do. So a ton of credit for him, but also a ton of credit for Danny Cruz for taking a leap on a guy who has not been in this context. Like, he's about to play one of the biggest teams in the league. And the kid not only has won a starting role, but has really proven the fans like what he's made out of. That's a little bit of gamble when they don't have the background to go with them. It's not fair at all, but fans are going to be judging that if that doesn't work out. So I think he particularly stands out. You got guys like Jake Morris, who was in the MLS reserve stuff. Yeah. So we didn't really know a ton about him. And I didn't know what to think, information you get on the MLS, like Next Pro or whatever it's called. A little limited, but he's been absolutely fantastic. Again, I could keep going. You talked about Taylor Davila. Like he's so good. I love how accurate his passing is. Even guys that have stuck around. I mean, we've seen different things from them. Wilson Harris has had a heck of a start to the year. Ray Serrano's really kind of came into his own. We lose Brian Ownby, who's a big piece of the puzzle, set to be the captain. he's always incredible, but Ray Serrano stepped up. Elijah Widener has taken some big step forward as well. He's starting to look like the guy I think that they knew they had a few years back. That he had a big injury that really kind of set things back for him time-wise. But a lot of things are really coming together. And he's not only gotten position, Coach Cruz has not only gotten positionally the players they need, but I think he's put a lot of emphasis on the mental side of the game, how players act and react. And, that was definitely, I know, part of his vetting process and trying to understand the players he's bringing in. So he's not only gotten guys that fit like tactically on the field, but all that extra off the field stuff. And you're probably familiar with it like I am, but when you are as close to these teams and follow these teams as closely as we do, like you start to really appreciate that component of the game. Because I'll say before I started doing all that I didn't appreciate it half as much as I probably should have in terms of what it can do like for a team, how it can help or hurt the team. And it's really just, it's been cool to see this kind of vision that he's had, for the past few years kind of really just come together. And it's been a really special season thus far for Louisville City. I hope that it can continue. I knew at some point they'd probably come back down the reality, but like they haven't really crashed down as much as I might have otherwise thought. Yes, our last Rhode Island match was not good. Part of that was like really going for it at the end and getting a few more scored on you. But I thought things would maybe normalize a little bit more than they have in terms of like average numbers, like points per game and stuff like that, or goals scored. But it's still been really high. And like you said, I think year over year, the USL continues to get much, much better. And for the team to be this dominant in a league that is that much better than what it was only just a few years ago is just really hard to comprehend for me. So I'm very excited about what this team could potentially do. Like if we do end up winning the regular season, I'm a little nervous about that because that doesn't normally bode well for the playoffs itself.
No.
But I can't look that far ahead. We still got to make the playoffs, but right now they've put themselves in a very good position to do so. I think we're still, even after that loss, still like 6 points clear of Charleston. If I'm not mistaken, right. Something like that. There's a gap. There's more than a game gap there. So it's just been a dream scenario, and it's been particularly refreshing after last season, which this is going to sound very spoiled for us, but like was a down year for us. Like it felt like we did make it to the Eastern Conference Final, but man, we did it in the like limpiest, like worst way possible. We never really got any sort of like win streak going. A lot of nail biting, a lot of frustration. And I know this is the very spoiled, but like, so the paradigm between last season and this season is also, I think, really kind of just wowed us Louisville City fans. That's been part of the equation.
Last week on the USL show, we did the mid-season USL Championship Best 11. We decided to go through, and it was a fun exercise. We figured it out. I'm pretty happy with the lineup we put out there. There's a couple of changes I kind of regret a little bit, but we had two Louisville City players that ended up making the Best 11. Do you want to take a guess on who they were?
Honestly, there's a few different directions you could go with it. Wilson Harris was pretty top notch.
Yep, that's one of them.
Okay. I'm honestly torn between Davila and Ordonez for number 2.
Neither.
Oh, okay.
So
Jake
I'll
Morris,
give you
maybe?
one last guess. No, it is. We went with Elijah Winder.
Okay, no, he's been. Yeah, I mean, again, like I feel like there's several like reasonable choices that you could have made, and yeah, he's made some big leaps forward.
So
he's done really well.
I mean, I feel like we spread around the love fairly decently, but like we had two Louisville City players. We had two Indy 11 players. We had two Charleston Battery players. Then we have someone from Sacramento. We had someone from Rhode Island. We had someone from San Antonio, one from Memphis. And it made a lot of sense. And so the reason I bring that up is you bring up Danny Cruz. I fought pretty heavily for Danny Cruz to be manager of the season.
Good man.
And the only reason we didn't was we kind of sat there and said, well, Eric Quill out in New Mexico has done an amazing job of what he's managing with his team. Mm-hmm. If you give almost any other coach his roster, they are below the playoff line and they're the top of the West. Meanwhile, we kind of sat there and said, well, if you gave any other manager Louisville City's roster or Charleston's roster, they'll at least make the playoffs. Like they're good rosters. But and I was really sitting there, I was like, but this is Danny Cruz's best coaching job that he has ever done. And the big thing that really opened my eyes when I really started diving into watching Louisville City was before Louisville City was possess the ball, possess, and then press the crap out of you until you gave them the ball back so they can possess it again. It was like if they didn't have the ball, they were a junkie that was going through like withdrawals. Like they had to have it. They had to have the ball. This year, they are okay with not having the ball. They still press. They still do their thing from time to time. You can tell when Danny's sitting there saying, hey, guys, go up. Or, whoever is the captain that day. I think it's been Kyle Adams for you guys. Yep. Is like, hey, like, go on, press them. They trigger it, but it's not a constant thing. Mm-hmm. And that was a moment of, for me, it's like, oh my God, Danny Cruz has more than one party trick. He can do more than just press possess, football. He can do other things. And that was my moment of, whoa, okay. I also feel like this year he's done a really good job of rotation. We have seen him get so many players in that it feels like you have a lot of players who not only, feel like they should be starting, they should be starting. If they go anywhere else, they waltz into the first 11, and they're probably having to ride the bench, but they don't start on the bench more than 2 times in a row before they are starting. And if they're not starting, they're coming in the 60th and they're making impacts. He's plugging and placing and putting people in the best place to succeed better than anybody else right now.
He has such a high bar in terms of what he's expecting on the pitch. And if he doesn't get that, he's not afraid to make a substitution, particularly the outside back position. Like, I lost count of how many times at halftime he's made one or maybe both switches there. There's such a demand on that role. And if he doesn't get that 110% he expects, if it's like 109, you're out, We got, if it's, depending on who's out there, you put Jake Morris out there, Amadou Dia, Aiden McFadden, who we got on loan, which felt unfair. There's just like a lot of talent, and he's not afraid to pull that trigger and make that change, particularly in his positions, but anywhere else as well. So it's that high bar, I think, has really put a lot of pressure on the players to perform their best because they know he's got a deep roster and he is not afraid to use it at all. And I think it worked to our benefit. There's guys who've played who've gotten a number of minutes for us in the past that can't even sniff the field, or sometimes in the bench, like Carlos Nogel's been totally MIA because it's just such a deep team. We haven't seen a ton of Dylan Maris. I mean, outstanding player, and he's having a hard time getting in. It's just it's that competitive. And I think that's a lot of the driving force for this team. He's getting guys that are really bought in, think of Apollo de Piccolo, just laser focused. Getting a lot of those kind, and then also putting a lot of competition in the mix, and it's been a beautiful thing to watch.
I mean, for people who don't know the Dylan Maris, why that's a big deal. Last year, he was the top free agent in the USL, and I don't think it was close. Everybody was fighting for Maris, and obviously he's a Louisville guy. He's from the area. He played at UL. It was a natural landing spot for him. But when the top free agent of the USL class has only played in 5 games and doesn't even have a total of 90 minutes played on the field yet, that's gross. That's messed up.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's almost like we kind of have, I'll make like a college basketball kind of analogy here. It's almost like kind of like UK. There's just such an attraction to it, and it's always going to be like next man up. Like we're gonna like, I one quote I constantly think of from Coach John Calipari's when he was asked about like if the NBA did away with like the requirement to go to college for 1 year. Like, well, what happened? Like Coach Cal, like that's your whole thing. He's like Kentucky will always eat first, and that's kind of what I think that Louisville is really starting to cement themselves as in terms of like the USL landscape, like between the history, the infrastructure, and just kind of the stadium, the crowd, all of that. Like it makes it a really attractive destination. So I think we get a lot of pull with these recruits. So that's also part of the equation. Coach Cruz has kind of helped maintain this high level of success the club has had, so that this past off season, it's helped us that much more with the recruitment efforts.
So let's talk about this particular matchup. We've seen it already, unfortunately. Easter's I think it was Sunday or Saturday right before, and Legion got absolutely shellacked 5-0. And I talked to Garrett Komatz for me yesterday, for the listeners 3 days ago, on here to talk a little pre-match preview with Detroit City. And I can't remember if it was on the show or if it was after. What it all blends together. But the conversation was essentially Legion didn't even play too badly against Louisville City. Don't get me wrong, they didn't play well. Like you can't look at a 5-0 loss and say we played a good game out there. I think if you were to check my drafts on any kind of social media, there's a lot of things that stayed in the drafts that I'm very glad stayed in the drafts. And, if we were to check that out, obviously I was not happy with what happened, but including every single like playoff run, every single run that Lou City has ever had, I have never seen them click like they did against Legion that game. It felt like they could do no wrong. One of the guys that you mentioned, Ray Serrano, he is just that guy, just plain and simple. He is just something else. Morris had an unbelievable game that game. Just lots of players that just showed up and showed out, and it felt like they just could do no wrong. And it's kind of helpless as a fan, because you're like, I want to get mad at the players, and don't get me wrong, I was upset at what I was watching, but there was another side of me that was just kind of in awe with how good this Louisville City team is.
Yeah, they definitely have a high ceiling. They're not only brutally efficient when they're really clicking well, but there's loads of talent to go with that as well. And that's just like, that's a hard combination to go up against, and particularly playing at home is really, they've turned it back, Lynn Family Stadium back into a fortress. Well, we got a little Helm's Deep explosion there with Rhode Island, but still, I think that the averages are still very positive playing there. It's just been, things have worked out really well. I think the one biggest criticism the fans have in terms of the team's performances is they haven't been able to replicate that same kind of just like absolute murdering on the road. And I think there's a lot of speculation that it has to do with some of the field sizes. Louisville City likes to really use the width. We have a relatively bigger pitch, and a lot of pitches around this league are not on the wider side. So, and it's adapting that thing's been struggle at times.
The first year you guys opened Lynn Family, you had it set like Lynn Family was as big as FIFA would possibly allow it, and it was one of the most comical things I'd ever seen in my life.
Actually, they changed it. It was like a few games into it, because I remember going, you could see where the paints were. He moved it in like a couple yards on each size, so it wasn't like a huge difference, but they did trim down the size. But yeah, they've really, it's still very much on the larger side. I don't I haven't seen like a full list of the dimensions of all the pitches, but I'd venture to guess we're probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest.
The only, I think, RGV would have given you guys a run. Birmingham, I feel like, is actually if you were to look up standard soccer size, that's just what Birmingham does. They look up standard dimensions. They're like, yeah, just put that out there. They'll be fine.
Me playing Football Manager, standard.
Yeah,
let's move on.
Just whatever. But it was really funny. The first few games I watched, and I think that was that Racing's first year as well. And
that sounds right.
No,
they came that following year. We opened it in 2020, so the pandemic year. 2020 was the first, real year, where there wasn't all the weirdness.
I feel like even with Racing's first year, they were still it was still a comically large pitch. And
it's still very big. Again, the trimming they did was fairly minor in the grand scheme.
So things that changed for Legion since then is they've gone through a pretty major shape change. They have gone to this 4-3-3. They left the 3-4-3. They've gone to a 4-3-3. They have a right back and Derek Dodson, who spent a long time in Charleston. He was also in Memphis. He was with Memphis for 1 year.
Right.
So that's good. But yeah, he went to Minnesota, came back on loan to Birmingham. And so that's a big change for us. And Miguel Perez is not playing as much as he was kind of doing at the beginning of the year. And so there's been a lot of changes for this team that have made them a lot deeper and a lot more well-rounded. It was really the place I really noticed it was the Charleston game. And I've mentioned this a lot, but I talked to Ben Pierman after the game, and they talked about how they put Stefano Pino out on the wing. And Pino, while not a tall guy, can jump over a mountain. And they were like, most fullbacks are not very tall. And so he just was winning headers over the fullbacks. And that's just what they're doing. While Pino has not been starting lately, he's been a last-minute sub. They kind of kept the same idea of let Kobe Hernandez-Foster do his work. Let Enzo Martinez sit a little bit deeper. And in this, I say most recent game, most recent game versus San Antonio, they just said, hey, Enzo, drop all the way deep and let Tyler Pasher and let Prosper Kasim work. Let Tabor Teka Preston do their work. And it's turned into a really good squad. So I'm going to be intrigued to see how a kind of a front three, but also sort of a front four at times goes against the back three of Louisville City. Because the thing with Louisville City now is that, before there were other players that were just sitting so deep. Tyler Gibson was essentially the third center back in that team for the last few years. I mean, it was comical, just his refusal to go past the halfway line. And that's just kind of what they did. Now they have a proper back three, but they also have Winder and they have Davila, who are both going up with the rest of the team. I want to see how Legion can take advantage of that.
It's going to be tough because those outside backs, for as forward as they get, they also very much get back. You can try to beat Louisville City, but I think it's been difficult. Other teams have tried to do that, like kind of catch them on a counter, shorter numbers. But the players for Louisville City have been very smart about positioning themselves to be able to kind of get back in the defensive mix. And even when it looks like there might be something going there, the center backs have always done a very good job of buying just enough time to get that additional support there. Again, certainly not impossible. I think Charleston did a pretty good job against it. That was one of the other losses that we had. But it's a tall order. It just feels like the Louisville City players are all over the pitch. There's just such an extremely high work rate, which now that I say that kind of makes me think, I don't know if you really kind of follow this, but like back when Marcelo Bielsa was at Leeds a couple seasons ago, like he's like pretty like notorious for like he gets the best out of his guys, but it comes at a pretty steep cost in terms of like he's just it's a very high work rate required, and I'm kind of seeing that parallel now with the Louisville City squad, and hoping that doesn't come into like kind of later season detriment towards them, because that's oftentimes what happened with Marcel Bielsa's team, and you saw that happen with Leeds a couple of times despite the success they had with them.
Just kind of wider league picture, I think that's the conversation that we've been having with Marcina down at San Antonio. Like what San Antonio does is high work rate, basically run your players under the ground every single game and never have enough subs to give them a break. Yeah. I really think Louisville will be okay with just the amount of rotation that they do. Yeah, it's a high work rate, but they get a break.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly helps. There has been a kind of a lot of mixing and matching, you know, some of it out of necessity. One thing we haven't mentioned yet is losing Adrian Perez. While he hasn't been banging the goals, like I might have otherwise guessed at the start of the season, he still nonetheless had been a very influential player on the pitch. And I don't think that we've kind of fully like replaced him in terms of like, if you told us like to name our best starting 11 right now, that's still like a little bit of one that you could maybe do some arguments on. And I think our offense has felt missing him a bit. Not that they're absolutely toothless or anything, but I think he was kind of one of those, you know, at times like lower key impacts. I mean, he has gotten like a number of assists and stuff still, but I think he had a lot of benefit that was going under the radar too. I just thought of all the players that we brought in, he was the one I was probably most excited about because he just felt like such a perfect match for what Coach Cruz was trying to do in terms of like his formation, like shape and style. So I'm really disappointed he's not only injured, but it sounded like it was going to be a longer term one. So I don't know what that timetable looks like, but have to imagine at least a month or two.
Yeah, Perez, who was with Loyal for a year, was an MLS guy for a while. I mean, he was great. The player that I kind of mentioned earlier that I absolutely adore, Sam Gleadle. I love Sam Gleadle.
Such a nice guy.
He's wonderful. He was somebody that would kind of reach out into like DMs and just be like, listen to whatever, appreciate you, you're doing great, and like would timestamp things that he heard and be like, you were right on this, you weren't right about this, but I understand why you said this, and you know, just like, and then would just be like, you guys are great, my dad thinks you are great, and all these kind of different things, and I'm like, thanks, Sam, you're a great guy. And then he's also just such a good player.
We had him on our Vamos Morados podcast, and he's such a stand-up, like awesome dude. He was a particularly intriguing pickup because he was a paid transfer. And I'm not sure if Louisville City had ever done a paid transfer. I know they've been very minimal in the league altogether, but it was really interesting. And then they said he was going to be an outside back, but things kind of changed, and he's more so kind of been used as a forward. But like you mentioned earlier, he's a Swiss Army knife, kind of like Niall McCabe, and we can really kind of plug him and play in anywhere. But he's been getting some more time recently than he had been earlier in the season, which is good because, you know, he's just such a nice guy. Big fan of his.
Now I'm intrigued to find out if they have done any other actual transfers.
I know that list has to be very short. I don't know if Louisville City has another paid one. I guess paid inbound paid.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you guys have been paid a couple of times, but yeah, I mean, let's see. I'm not seeing. Okay, so nope. Okay, so you guys had who was the dude that showed up that was like 7'12". You guys paid for him.
Oh. Martin Paus, yeah. I actually forgot about him. It's not been that long.
No, you guys
like ancient history.
Let's see. Because I'm just so intrigued at this point.
That's fair. That was that felt like a little bit of a desperation move. So
technically, Cam Lancaster was a paid move.
Really?
To bring him back from Nashville.
Ooh. Interesting. I don't know if okay, that makes sense. I would make sense. I didn't realize that though. But
Jorge Gonzalez was a paid move.
Oh, I thought Portland just cut ties with him, and we scooped him up as free agent because we had him as a loanee his first season.
It appears that it was a loan to buy, and
Okay.
a guy named Akil Watts, whom I have never heard of.
Oh yeah, he came in like 2018. He was a Hackworth guy. He played outside back, center back ish, but he was more of like a midfielder type, but never really got that opportunity. He never really like fully developed, and he left, and now he's in St. Louis's system, where Coach John Hackworth is now.
And then y'all's first season, you guys went crazy with 5 paid transfers.
Oh wow, I had no idea. I wasn't here at that point, so that's
Sean Reynolds, Magnus Rasmussen.
Oh, Magnus is great.
Nate Pollock, the worst Pollock. Let's see, Connor Shinosky, and absolute legend Aiden Quinn.
He's still good.
He's still really good.
Yeah, the Connor Shinosky guy. I think he's kind of like he played a long time for Richmond, right?
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think he was older when we got him. He's like towards the tail end of his career. Because I did a little bit research back there. Again, like I never got to see any of that team, but I know a lot of those names. Interesting. So I stand corrected on the paid transfer thing.
Well, to be fair, it seems like it's one every 2 years after the initial couple seasons. After the initial couple seasons where you guys had your set squad, everybody else has been frees and loans. So
yeah, pretty much as long as I've been around. And again, I just misinterpreted other ones. I thought Jorge was just we picked him up for free after the loan in Cam. That makes sense. I knew we were going to have to probably pay him a lot more since he was coming from the MLS, but
yeah,
interesting.
Well, that always a good. This is the stuff I get really sucked into. This is why I can't do my work. This is why I'm like always behind on things because I just get into rabbit holes like this.
Oh yeah, the internet's very good about that.
It's awesome. So. I guess the question here is, what do you see of this match? Because, last year Legion did the double on Louisville City, and I think they even did the double on them the year before.
That sounds right.
And so it was definitely there was definitely monkey off the back vibes after the Louisville City Legion game on Easter weekend. Now, with 2 straight losses, one of them being utter heartbreak to not y'all's biggest rival, obviously that's Indy, but most competitive rival in Tampa Bay.
A lot of history there, yeah.
A lot of history there. And then this most recent one to Rhode Island, which was kind of just a sucker punch in the end. And then you guys went for it and just, kind of got a taste of Louisville City's own medicine. How do you see this one going down in the Magic City?
So first off, if you were to ask the team, they'll very much phrase it as, looking forward, preparing for Birmingham. The past is the past. But
whatever. They're athletes.
I know. I was about to say the past. The past few games do probably have to sit it in the mind. The Tampa Bay one, scoring at the death. That's just in some ways you gotta just kind of consider that like crap luck, and so I don't think that one's being too overthought. But I think and also with I think the Rhode Island one, because of the magnitude and that it was the more recent one, there will be a chip on the players' shoulders, I think, and I don't know if that will make them play better, but they're definitely going to be mad. They're going to want to right those wrongs. They're not used to losing, let alone losing by a big margin, especially to a team that, they look at the standings too. They know exactly where the other team's sitting. So we're probably looking at them thinking we should be beating this team. I don't think that they necessarily overlooked them, but they're thinking in their head, we should be beating them, and they didn't. Yeah. So, that's definitely, I think, going to be something present in the mind to right that wrong. And I'm sure Coach Cruz ad nauseum made it clear to them how not good that match was. But it's a good group of guys mentally. So I'm sure they were already on that wavelength, pretty pissed about the performance and the result. So personally, I'm hoping that it's channeled positively. Of all the teams in the USL, I like you and the other Birmingham fans. So if there's a team that I don't want to totally beat down, it'd be the Birmingham Legion. But at the same time, they sure could use it. We'll see if they can make that happen though, because again, they're a very different team on the road. Our road record is not as bombastic as our home field record is. So they're much more of a normal team there. I think ultimately they want to get things right. They don't want to go 3 straight without a win, because I'd feel very uncharacteristic for this team who has done so well this season.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm just I guess there was a Pittsburgh game in the middle, but also Pittsburgh's like really bad. So,
yeah, it's kind of forgettable, especially because those games aren't like the most exciting either, like with how they play and whatnot. So
yeah,
I forgot
there was a Pittsburgh game in
the middle.
I
did too, because I talked about three straight ones. We definitely won that one, but
yeah, but I mean, even so, 3 losses in 4 matches is not 2024 Louisville City.
No, they'll be very unhappy about that.
I think that if I'm a Birmingham fan, I still think you should be hopeful for a result. I think that this team is clicking. I said preseason, and I stand by it, that this is the best Legion squad we have ever put together. It doesn't have the sexy name values to them. Like, there are better names that we've had on the roster, but as a roster, this is the best roster that Tommy Sohn has put together. And this is the best coaching job Tommy Sohn has done. And I'm sure 5-0 keeps him up at night. And I'm sure for a lot of these players, 5-0 keeps them up at night, and they are going to come out fiery. Guys like Tyler Pasher, who just can't help but score against Louisville City. Guys like Enzo Martinez, who hates everybody, that just scores against everybody. Those are guys that you can really rely on to get goals. And as we saw against San Antonio, you need a goal. Alex Granale is one of the tallest humans on the planet and wins a header no matter what. He always or backheel goal in Louisville. That one was still bizarre. Proud of you, Alex. But he always seems to find his way on a corner routine some way or another in these pivotal matches. So if I'm a Legion fan, I'm confident in getting a point. But I also have to be realistic in saying Louisville City is about to come out with a different kind of fire, where we have a midweek game in Detroit, and they are a fantastic team. And then we have to come back home to Birmingham, where it's 1 billion degrees. Meanwhile, Louisville City gets gets a full week off to not only rest, but simmer in what they did over the weekend. And this is not just a Louisville thing. This is any team in the USL right now. You fear a team that has to sit in their own, for a week.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you guys definitely have some added motivation, but the midweek game definitely does detract. But playing at home has to be helpful. Again, like, we're just not we haven't really, I think, clicked away from home with these different field dimensions, turf, all the different things that the league can throw at you when you're playing at these different venues and whatnot. So it's not going to, I don't know if it's going to be that same juggernaut you guys saw when you came up into Louisville. So it has all the makings for really interesting match with all those things come into play. And yeah, I getting a result certainly isn't out of the equation for Birmingham. They're a lot more human outside of Lynn Family Stadium.
Well, before I let you go, I do have the one thing to truly unite us all, which is I'm very confused that Tyler Stevenson just hit a triple.
Okay. I actually got to go to my first Reds game in a while. Just this past weekend. My nephew was like, they're part of their kids club, like ran the bases sort of thing. And when I was back there, I'm like, man, I miss baseball. That's actually why I shaved down the mustache. So I'm like, I'm going to be obnoxious and just do a real like baseball thing. And I looked at it, I'm like, I kind of dig it. I'm going to keep it. My wife's not pleased.
Well, I haven't tried it yet. I told my wife, I was like, I don't have to shave over the summer. Maybe I'll do it. And I've shaved every time because I never like how it looks. And she was like, it looks fine. And I'm like, okay, you're lying to me. It's fine.
I
But
look like a child without facial hair, so it's been a non-negotiable for me since as long as I could grow it.
fair enough. Hey man, I really appreciate you hopping on. Obviously people can find vamosmorados.com. If somebody wants to hop on iHeartRadio and listen to you do your broadcast, what radio station is that on?
It's on ESPN 680 1057 in Louisville. I'm not sure the iHeart station, but if you go to I think it's just ESPN Louisville or Louisville, like whatever the station numbers. I can't remember the website. I think it's just ESPNLouisville.com and you can listen to it, but I'm going to be a homer, so just be prepared.
That's fine. Hey, Benton, thank you so much. I would say where can people find you, but they can't find you anywhere, and you are better off for it. VamosMorados.com.
I'm off the socials, just the website now.
I appreciate that, and I love that for you. Thank you all so much for listening. I'm hoping for a great game. For me, I hope a great game tomorrow. You already know what happens, so I'm hoping it goes well. I am dying in anticipation, and maybe you're already laughing at me. I don't know. But thank you all so much for listening. I appreciate you all. Until next time, guys.